Welcome along then, everyone, to round 7 of the Premier Sim Gaming League's F3 Season 31. And tonight we will be taking to another Italian track, of course. If you were here last week, we were in Italy for Monza. We are this time heading to the Autodromo Internazionale Enzo Edino Ferrari, of course, better known as Imola. I am, as always, Paul Zytrix Buckley. Joining once again alongside me tonight is Ben Satsford. Ben, great to have you with us again, once again, for this race this evening. And the championship is definitely starting to heat up as we get closer and closer to the end.
100%. Now, I'll say great to be here. Great to have you back. I certainly missed you in the commentary box last time out. But yeah, things are definitely heating up. So we had a crazy round at Monza last time round. We saw a lot of drama. Some big shake-ups in the championship as well, with some defenders not being present and some surges amidst all of the chaos to some quite surprising wins and podiums.
Yeah, absolutely. We can see those championship standings right now. And as you can see, thanks to that win from last time out, Drake Dempsey now leads the championship as we head into round 7 of 11. We've got a 10-point gap back to Daniel, who was also jumped up thanks to those 3 main title challengers not being here last time out. The podium for Valentin Tivard being his first points as well. I'm definitely going to be keeping one eye on him as the championship unfolds with a P2 in his first points finish. If that consistency comes in, he could too be a threat as time draws on. Of course, we should mention as well, talking about championship defences, we have learned before this race, after the last race, that Morgan Ball will no longer be racing in PCF3. Last season's champion sitting out the rest of the season, Thomas Lamina, will take his seat for the remainder of season 31, meaning we are going to be guaranteed now a new champion in season 31. It was looking fairly likely anyway. Morgan Ball did not have the best luck at the start of this season, and as such has chosen to set out. The other driver swap we've got to talk about as well is Simon Lekomsky is back in. This time he's replacing Christian Sendel. Those are the 2 driver swaps that we are aware of. Waiting for the lobby to fill up now, and while we do, let's take a look at the track for this evening. Of course, as mentioned, we are going to Imola, another one of the biggest names on a track that you could get in Formula 1, as it's riddled with history as the cars make their way down towards the Variante Tamburello, then towards Villeneuve and Tosa at turn 7. Might see some overtakes there through Piratella and Acqua Minerale before we get to the chicane at turns 14 and 15. The Variante Alta before making their way down the hill to Ravazza and then towards the start-finish straight. There's a few places that we could see some action down into Ravazza, down into Tosa, and of course down into the Tamburello chicane as well. But as George Russell and Valtteri Bottas showed just a couple of years ago, if you get it wrong trying to make a move into Tamburello, especially in changeable conditions, if we get those, as we've had for the last couple of years in the real-world version of Formula 1, it can end very, very badly indeed. So everybody will be on their toes to make sure that they are putting those cars in the perfect places.
100%. Yep, I agree. So they've got to be stepping carefully. They've got to be really, they're not afraid to push the limits, but at the same time, they have to be very careful, very aware of the drivers around them. Conditions can very quickly evolve, and we can very easily see how those change the effects on the cars, the effects on driving style, especially through some of the sections of the track, let's say where you have a bit of undulation. The behavior of the car changes wildly. So as conditions evolve, maybe say track rubbering in a little, getting a bit more settled into the track, drivers have to be on their toes for the entire race.
They absolutely do, not just in terms of driving as well. Strategy could play a part, as we've seen, particularly towards this middle part of the season, actually. Strategy sort of differing a little bit. I've not been able to catch the race from last week, but as we saw from when we were in Suzuka, we had some more split strategies. Towards the start of the season, it was pretty uniform up and down the grid, as we saw pretty much every driver go out with a hard tyre to begin with, whereas we saw in Suzuka at least, it was starting to get a bit of a divide. You had some on the mediums, some on the hards at the start, and it did make for a more exciting race as these strategies evolved. Now, to my knowledge, at least to my memory, we haven't seen any sort of rain or wet conditions yet in season 31, and that too could throw a spanner in the works. As I mentioned, we've had some changeable conditions through the real Formula 1 around Imola in the last couple of years. So could that play a factor tonight as well? We don't really know going into it. It could not. And of course, we don't really have the fallback we usually have going into these races, is we can look at what happened sort of yesterday evening and what went on in the Formula One, in the F1 tier. Of course, we don't have that anymore with F1 not racing. So we're sort of going into a little bit of the unknown here this evening as the drivers take to the tracks of Imola. I believe we're very, very close to getting into qualifying now, as I did hear a beep, and I don't know whether the beeps have continued. They have. We are now indeed loading into qualifying, so let's get ready to get the cars on the track then for qualifying this evening. Short qualifying, as we always have in F3. As we load in, who's going to take pole position? Is Drake Dempsey going to get that Ferrari on pole position and strengthen his championship position in this race on Ferrari home turf? Or are we going to get a different driver putting in a good performance in qualifying? Time will tell, and as you can see, the time is now ticking.
Yeah, this is what it comes down to. A lot of drivers are in a precarious position, I have to add, and they may not all be used to, as you said, wet weather conditions. We did have, of course, Spa with the sudden downpour towards the latter half of the race, sending some big shake-ups around the field and being Joseph Loke's first win here in F3. But whether we see that again and whether all drivers will be able to adjust just like they did there, we'll have to wait and see. But I think that the strategy side of things, it's very much divided. It might not be so much a case of how we're getting on in the season. It might just simply be the track. Some tracks are very favoured towards, let's say, certain compounds, be that tyre wear reasons, track temperature reasons, or just in general, a lot of drivers know a certain strategy and they play to it. And a lot of drivers end up mimicking what they see on the grid at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. Sort of seeing what their rivals are doing and thinking, if it works for them, it might work for me. The one thing we can say about compounds, though, is we're going to see a lot of the softs for the next 16 minutes as the drivers start setting their times. Of course, we only have the one qualifying session if you are new to PSGL F3. Unlike the F1 tier, we don't run with the full qualifying, so there is no Q1, Q2, Q3 here. It is simply just Q, really. So we won't see any drivers. It is short quali, so there won't be any drivers coming out, or at least we don't expect any drivers coming out in the intermediates to get an eye in early. They will be straight out on the softs. As you can see, almost everyone out on the track at the moment. Only Zoltan Boda staying in the pit lane, and I believe he too is on his way out as well. So every car is now on the track, the first of which to start the lap, as we see heading through Rivazza right now, is Milan Mayer. And as we make our way onto the straight, let's ride on board with the Alpine for a lap of the Autodromo Internazionale Enzo Edino Ferrari. So around this straight that's not quite straight, down towards turn 1 we go, which is, well, technically turn 2 and 3 around here as we head into the Variante Tamburello, changed of course after the events in the 90s. And then we're almost immediately into the Variante Villeneuve, another quite quick series of corners, but it tightens up more than you'd expect on the exit there, and you need to get it over to the right-hand side, ready to get the good line into Tosa, and then we are up the hill to around turn 8, and then it is into Piratella, turn 9. A little bit of a stab of the brakes and a bit of a downshift there, and then we are down the hill to Aqua Minerale, a tricky braking zone downhill into the right-hander, covering the curve as much as we can through there, and a little bit of a wobble there for the Alpine as we headed the final part of the corner into the Variante Alta. We go now, again, running as wide as you can on that exit curve, and then the lap is very nearly done. We've just got one more run down the hill before we head into Rivazza, and then we are back onto the start-finish straight. Need to get a good exit out of here to carry that momentum down, and it was a decent exit, but not a decent enough lap in Milan Mayer's eyes as he dives straight back into the pit lane.
Well, I say, in fact, got an invalidation early on, say, heading through into Sector 2. But that's going to leave Valentin Tyward coming in with a 1:14.897, setting a good pace. Janu Turkov coming in with a 1:15.3. Jan Haladej coming in with a 1:15.1 as well, setting the pace. 14.9, Modesto Mena. Drake Dempsey with 14.6. The Ferrari, of course, being the winner last time out in Monza. Looks to keep that streak happening. Looks to keep the Tifosi happy. Give them what they asked for on their home turf. Why not make it a doubleheader?
Yeah, absolutely. As we said, he could be one to watch in qualifying. The Ferrari on Ferrari home turf, championship leader as well at the moment, and he has come out swinging this evening with that 14.6, 2/10 quicker than anybody else has managed so far. Just a few more cars waiting to cross the line to get their first lap times in. It does seem we had some more invalidations going on in that first set of laps. Zoltan Boda has come into the pits after that one as well. So everybody went out. Almost everybody has set a lap time, so we've got our first pecking order of the evening, though that is undoubtedly going to change as time goes on. 14.6, the current provisional pole time for Drake Dempsey. Surprisingly, though, his teammate Olaf Soko only managing a 15.1. I say only managing a 15.1, like it's massively slower than everybody else, but there are 3 other drivers around on a 15.1 and a few ahead on a 15.0 as well, so it's still very tight on the grid at the moment, but we would expect the other Ferrari to be up there as well. Soko's had some good results so far this season. He too is quite high up in the championship, really flying the flag for Ferrari in season 31. That pairing in a good shout for the Constructors' Championship, battling with McLaren. But yeah, not the ideal run for Olaf Soko to begin with, but time is still on his side.
Yeah, they still got plenty of time left. Say 12 and a half minutes. That's enough for a good few laps, good few tyre swaps, enough to get some good running, get acclimatized to the track. But really, what it all comes down to is that third sector. I think a lot of the make or breaks in at the times here on track is just that third sector, say the tough chicane, the quick undulation, heading down the hill. It's all about how you carry the momentum and how you carry your car through it. Because, of course, if you push too much, your rear can kick out very quickly, as we saw Sandra Maris just do coming through into Sector 2. Your rear can kick out very quickly if you are not careful, especially as it looks like things are getting a little bit overcast here in Imola. Drivers are going to have to be fast to get some good laps down.
Yeah, because if those clouds do open and the heavens fall, then these times are not going to get any quicker as we are used to seeing in qualifying. If we start getting some rain, that 14.6 is going to stand for the remaining 11 minutes, though it will definitely mix things up going forward, especially for the likes. It'll be very interesting to look at later on. And of course, Zoltan Boda currently sitting in P18. He's out on an outlap right now, probably because he's seen the potential change in the weather. Of course, he too is quite high up there in the championship standings at the moment. Another driver that missed out on racing last time out. And therefore dropped down a couple of positions, but he's still in the championship hunt, is Zoltan Boda. So to see him in P18, that's not where he wants to be, and if we get rain, he could well stay in that back end of the grid and make getting points this time round very difficult indeed. He is out now on a lap, heading down towards Tamburello. He's going to have quite a lot of traffic on this lap. You can see on the mini-map, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cars all have just come out the pit lane on their outlaps. And I know they will do their best to get out of the way. But there are parts of this circuit, there are parts of any circuit, where getting out of the way isn't as easy as just pulling over to the side of the road and letting the other guy pass. If it's going into a particular corner, for example, it can still unsight the driver that's coming through on a flying lap. It does look like they're going quick enough that it might not be so much of an issue for him. But I wonder if that might play on his mind on this lap, as we have had another lap time coming in as well. So there is only 2 lap times now left to be set on the session. Zoltan Boda and, of course, Leonard Goetze hasn't set a time yet either, as we do now find Zoltan Boda hitting that traffic, and look at this, going into Ravat, so there are cars everywhere. He has been stuck behind that McLaren coming into the final couple of corners, and has that hindered his time? Yes, he's come straight back into the pits, not happy with that one, and I believe that was the McLaren of Jonah Martins, who he got stuck behind. Jonah, of course, was setting up a lap at the time, getting ready to go out for a flying lap of zone, and Zoltan Boda just got caught between a rock and a hard place, really.
Yeah, so you saw coming out on the little mini-map just how many cars were flooding out at the same time. As you say, 10 cars all going. Absolutely.
Sorry to cut you off there, Ben. Jonah Martins coming out of the Variante Villeneuve, losing the back end and going into the wall. He might have avoided some damage there, but that's not what he would have wanted in the McLaren.
It looks safe for the McLaren. Doesn't look like any damage from my reads, but yeah, the amount of traffic, it's just everyone trying to get out. Everyone trying to beat the rain, as it looks like it's very much on the table right now. And we've seen one driver already get caught out by seemingly a drop in grip level. Modesto Mena coming through first sector and see Ravazzi Tamburello and just losing it into the gravel and ending up putting themselves out of qualifying.
Yeah, and that is our first retirement of the qualifying session as we see a lot of drivers coming back into the pits after those laps. And a few invalidations coming in and perhaps feeling this lack of grip, as we say, that's coming in as we keep our eyes on Leonard Gertz at the moment. Did manage to get a lap time in. A 1:14.9 puts him up to P7 at the moment, leaving Zoltan Bode the only driver not to set a lap time yet. So the pressure is on for one of our championship protagonists so far to get a lap time done. But of course, this time he's got all the cars in the pit lane. Hopefully he'll be able to get a lap time done without traffic this time around. Everybody's just coming in as he's coming out. So he may be able to avoid that this time around as we see him now making his way up the hill towards the Variante Alta. Getting the heat through those tyres, he's definitely going to need that with the drop in temperature that comes with having these clouds hovering above our heads. But are we going to see rain towards the end of the session? Is it going to hit while Zoltan Bode's trying to set his lap time? That would be the most unfortunate of situations. But we are about to see him start this lap off now, and we'll see if this one does work out for him. As we've got a few cars out on outlaps, but nowhere near as much traffic as he had last time around. He's clearing the one McLaren already as that's coming out of the pit lane. He's only got 5 cars in front of him with plenty of space this time around, so we should, fingers crossed, touch wood, all of that sort of stuff, see a lap time this time around from Zoltan Bode, so long as he keeps clean on his part. There, one of the traffic cars, the outlap cars, getting out of the way. That was Aston Martin, I believe. Sure which Aston Martin that was actually, but staying nicely out of the way on an in-lap. There's an Alpine staying out of the way as well, so it's much better traffic-wise this time for Zoltan Bode. But is it good time-wise? Can he rival times we see at the top of the board? Which we should say, Valentin Tijvaart, I was saying before we came into qualifying, after a podium for the first points finish last time out, I'm definitely going to keep one eye on the Haas driver, and he has gone on pole. That's a big slide though. Zoltan Bode coming out of the Variante Alta, that rear grip is absolutely not there where the drivers would want it at the moment. That will have cost him a little bit of time. DRS is disabled, so that means we have started to get that rain to fall, and that is not what Zoltan Bode needs. Right as he's coming to the end of the lap, he lost rear grip anyway. 17.0 isn't going to move him up the grid at all, and that might be, rain falls, the best that we're going to get from him. We see Jonas Martins retiring now. The times aren't really going to improve. Short of a miracle in the last 4 minutes. The rain's falling. So this is going to be your grid for this round of PSGL F3. Valentin Tijvaart taking pole position. The 1:14.558. Drake Dempsey and Olaf Soko. I was saying about Olaf Soko as well earlier on. Not in a position he wanted to, down in P11. Manages to get up onto the second row of the grid behind his teammate alongside Zander van Dijken. So, yeah, qualifying cut off a little bit early because of the rain, but could we see a few drivers now potentially going out to just sort of get their eye in on the wet conditions? We have got 5 minutes of the session left. They could almost treat it like a little bit of a mini practice session if they wish to get their eye in case this rain carries over into the race.
I will say, I know I sound like a broken record when I talk about things like banker laps, but this is a textbook reason why you want it, say Zoltan Bode. I think they knew in the back of their mind that this was very much their last chance, and I think that slide that we saw was essentially the death knell for their run, say, coming down the final through a couple corners and seeing that little warning, DRS disabled. They knew from that point it was over.
Yeah, so all the work to be done now for Zoltan Bode going into the race. But it does mean he's going to have an exciting race if he's got the pace. Of course, we've not really seen his true pace at the moment either. But if he's got the pace, could see him making some moves. He'll definitely be wanting to make some moves to get some points on the board for this time to try and keep himself in that championship fight. His main rivals, like Valentin Tijvaart, could be one of those main rivals. Drake Dempsey, of course, leading. Olaf Soko, Zander van Dijken, they're all up that top end of the grid, and Zoltan Bode, he's not. Daniel's up there as well in P7, so going to be an interesting one to watch from the back of the grid. It's going to be an interesting one to watch from the front of the grid. I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but Thomas Laminen is not going to be taking any further part in this qualifying session, along with basically every other driver. Laminen with 3 wheels on his wagon there. Got engineers sending cars out, so we have got a couple of drivers, it looks like, going to be heading out to sort of get their eye in, as we say, on the intermediate tyre. Let's see. Coming out there, it was Jeffrey Ritchie coming out first in the Alfa Romeo on that intermediate tyre. We've got 3 and a bit minutes left of the session. There's not many drivers left in the session whatsoever, but as I say, it's a good chance to come out, sort of maybe dial yourself into the wet weather conditions a little bit if you're feeling a little bit nervy or uncomfortable about them, and it does mean that we get to see some cars on track for the final few minutes as well.
Yeah, well, say drivers are still having to prepare themselves because they know that if they got wet weather in qualifying, there's a good chance that they could start on the wets heading into the race. So even if you can't improve your qualifying time, it is still a good shot to get some running in, get yourself acclimatized to how the car reacts, how it deals with all of these different challenges the track throws at you in a wet environment.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing just how wet it is out there at the moment. Jeff Ritchie, even though he's on the intermediate tyres, still wiggling around through the traction zones, especially in the Alfa Romeo at the moment. He's obviously not as much as he would be if he was out there on the softs, but nevertheless, it's still pretty darn slippy out there on the green tyres at the moment. You can see there the back trying to step out again through the middle of Ravazza. A little bit smoother coming out the final corner. Let's see what a lap looks like then. Wet conditions, immediate conditions, as we are currently driving in with Jeffrey Ritchie. And what sort of the lap time difference is going to be when we get across the line. This will be a good example of the difference between a dry track and a wet track. If you ever wondered sort of how much lap time is lost through just the water falling on the track, we head towards the end of the first sector, and you can see 3 seconds lost on his time already, and that's in one sector of the track.
Yeah, the level of grip difference is simply astounding. To say, just goes how much, even with these intermediate tyres, and one might even question whether we're going to full wets as Jeffrey Ritchie gets very wide coming through, heading over the crest. One has to even question whether it would be worth a full wet set, but that being said, we are coming to the last minute in qualifying, so I think drivers are just making that judgment call that it wouldn't be worth it. We can talk, however, about sector time. So in terms of peak times, best sectors, Valentin Tayvard coming in with the best sector 1 and sector 2. So the only driver to break 24 seconds in sector 1, and say coming in with a 25.6 through sector 2. Whereas Drake Dempsey continues to hold the Sector 3 record with a 24.875. But I think it goes to show that the Sector 1 and Sector 2 times, as amazing as they are not that different to the rest of the grid. So all of the time very much is made in that third sector.
Yeah, and I'm wondering how crucial that's going to become the race, as well, as they'll be running very close together, very similar pace, as you say, through the first parts of the lap, and it is going to be down to who's going to be quicker through the final sector. So it's really the main action zones I think we're going to be looking at are any brave souls down into Ravazza, or the more likely move going into the Variante Tamburello with the help of the DRS for turns 2 and 3 in the race. So yeah, get your predictions in now. Who you think is going to win in the chat. We've got Valentin Tayvard on pole alongside Drake Dempsey, Olaf Soko and Xander Van Dyken on row 2. Andrew Karapi and Jan Haladej in 5th and 6th, with Daniel and Leonard Goetze behind them in 7th and 8th. Rounding out the top 10, Modesto Mena in 9th, with Jeffrey Ritchie behind him. Simon Lekomsky starting from 11th alongside Yanni Turpkov. Jonah Martins will line up alongside Thomas Laminen, replacing the departing season 30 champion of Morgan Ball, as Jeffrey Ritchie decides he doesn't like the right hand side of the Alfa Romeo anymore, and decides he wants to remove it with the help of the pit wall. Get owned in P15 with Alessandro Moras, P16, Milan Maya, and P17 Zoltan Boda, who is perhaps the unluckiest person in this qualifying session with the timings of his final run that he was trying to get a lap time down with, lining up in P18. It is going to be Valentin Tijvard on pole then, and that is going to be a battle. Valentin Tijvard, of course, on the charge, finally getting some points in season 31 with his P2 finish last time out in Monza, much like Italy, because he's on pole at Imola as well, with championship leader Drake Dempsey alongside him. And yeah, Ben, who do you think's got this one?
It's tough to call because I don't think that we certainly haven't seen a wet start here in PC F3. So that really throws a curveball into things if that is the case. Purely based on how we've seen people perform, I want to go the safe bet here. Say Drake Dempsey, they've pulled out an absolute cracker of a performance here. They just like they did last time. Let's see if we can convert that into another race win.
Yeah, so our predictions are in. Let us know what you think in the chat. So we will play a short GT Omega advert while we load in. Welcome back then to PSGL F3, PC F3, as we are moments away from lights out here in Imola for round 7, and it is once again looking cloudy at the race start, but at camera angle, I can't see rain. Looks like it might be damp still, but I can't see rain falling, at least for the time being, so maybe we've got that changeable condition start that we were talking about that real world F1 has seen for the last couple of years. Perhaps we will, perhaps it is just the way the rubber is down on the pit lane. Once we get a different angle, we'll be able to tell for sure, at least I will, with the settings that I currently have the game on. We'll have to wait and see, but we've got Valentin Tijvard will be lining up on pole position with championship leader Drake Dempsey alongside him. The Ferraris are looking very strong here on home turf to really strengthen their championship fight in the constructors, with the McLaren lining up 2-3 on the grid is going to give them the perfect position to score some good points once again this evening. As you can see, the timer has popped up at the top of the screen. 20 seconds to go until we are on the grid and going with round 7. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting race with the likes of Zoltan Boda up towards the back of the grid as well. We could see some action moving through, depending on the sort of pace levels and how much grip is out there, because with the way the weather was in qualifying, really much of it. But we are now on the grid. It looks like we've got dry tyres on the cars. 4 lights, 5 lights are on, and we are away then for PCF3 round 7. It's a good start from Valentin Tijvard. The Ferrari's a little bit slower away from the line. Olaf Soko is definitely going to be coming under some pressure already from Xander Van Dijk, and Andrew Karapi could be looking as well as we head into turn 2, 3, 4 complex. Soko's managed to defend his position. There's contact in the background. Is that Get Owned has gone around.
That is Get Owned.
Definitely saw some contact there. Get Owned looks like he's got all the pieces attached to his car, but I didn't quite see who he has hit and whether there is damage. It did look a little bit almost like the reverse of what we saw at the real world F1 last time round, with the Alpine this time jumping into the air. He has managed to get going again, but he is dropped right the way to the back of the grid. We've got action going on towards the middle of the pack as well. Jona Martins fighting along with Modesto Mena and Yannick Turkov at the moment towards the back end of the top 10 towards this final championship point, and already we're seeing more fights down into Aquaman and Raleigh. Alessandro Moras getting past Milan Maya, almost in a little battle on its own that's working out there. Jona Martins still right on this battle, though. We got side-by-side action just behind Thomas Lamadon and Zoltan Boda. We said Zoltan Boda needed to make a charge. He's already now fighting his way up towards P14 from P18 on the grid, down towards Ravatsumi we go. He's got the inside line on Lamadon. They turn in, they touch. Lamadon is off the road. Zoltan Boda has kept it going, but What will the stewards think of that one? Will it be deemed a racing incident? I didn't really see a very decent enough angle to sort of see what sort of angles they were at there. But for the time being, at the very least, Zoltan Boda keeps that position. Lamlin's dropped a few from going through the gravel. And Boda is on a charge at the moment, making his way already towards those points-paying positions from P18 on the grid. He's definitely going to be the man to watch for this one, as Valentin Tivard still leads from Drake Dempsey, Olaf Soko, and Xander Van Dijken.
Yeah, say Zoltan Boda, looking a little bit dicey coming through those last two corners. I think stewards will take a keen eye to that one. But all of this is so you can read in some of their little micro movements. This screams a driver who is out on a mission. They are very frustrated, assumingly, with their qualifying performance, and they have one mission: just simply make up as much positions as possible. I don't care what you have to do, but you're going to do it. That's their MO. That's what they're doing. And we're already seeing that in the form of the aggression that they're expressing against some of their other drivers, and how they are just charging up the field. You can see them absolutely surging around those curbs, really just trying to cut away as much time as they possibly can, because they are, well, I say they're not out for seeing red, but they are certainly on a charge for something.
Yeah, absolutely. If we can take a look at the tyres as well, they have completely ignored what I said earlier on about the tyres not being uniform. Pretty much everybody's on the hards, except for Milan Maya and of course now Ketone, who's made a pit stop from damage on lap 1. They're all on the hard tyres, so Zoltan Boda doesn't have to worry about any sort of mismatch in that sort of sense. No DRS yet, of course. That will have activated on this lap, so now he will have that to his advantage. But once again, with the field as tight as it is, he's not really going to have that to an advantage. It is all going to come down to battery management, because the DRS train that Zoltan Boda finds himself in now, that goes all the way to Olaf Soko, who's dropped back from Drake Dempsey a little bit out of the DRS there, so the pressure is definitely going to be on Olaf Soko to hold that podium position for the moment. But Boda is sticking to the back of Janne Turpkov at the moment, and we will keep our close eyes on these battery percentages. Who is using their battery early, who's perhaps saving it for a little bit later on. At the moment, it's looking like Zoltan Boda is sort of just chilling in the sort of neutral middle ground, whereas Janne Turpkov's using just a little bit more of that battery in defence at the moment, 20% more used than the Alfa Romeo coming towards the end of lap 3. That could prove important for that position very, very soon, because if Janne Turpkov has to start saving, that makes them a sitting duck for Zoltan Boda.
Yeah, they're just waiting, biding their time, waiting for the opponent to run themselves out and then make the charge round. Because they know that the DRS train isn't doing them any favours. In fact, stretching from P3 all the way down to P17. Or P16, my mistake. But that essentially is the entire grid. So DRS is more or less null and void to them. So they have to rely on the battery and on making mistakes. So we saw earlier, say Simon Lekomsky dropping their tyres into the gravel a little bit, allowing Jeffrey Ritchie to get past. Looks like a little bit of a surge upwards from Janne Turpkov. Going to peek around, not going to go for it in the end, going very wide, heading through. And see, I think just trying to get out of the tow. Everyone's got the same mission, really. So just trying to get out of the tow of the other driver and trying to advance up despite the DRS train. Everyone's thinking on the same page, which is great for some and terrible for others. Say Zoltan Boda right on the tail of Janne Turpkov now. Say down to 2/10, and I'm not sure what the batteries are looking like, but this is going to be spelling a move very soon.
Yeah, well, Janne Turpkov is still demolishing that battery. Zoltan Boda is sort of sitting average at the moment, still on about 84%, which is double almost what Janne Turpkov's got available. And of course, we're already on we've just concluded lap 4. Janne Turpkov will have almost certainly been given a track limits warning for that extension at Piratella going wide through there. That is not what you want to be doing quite early on in the race. I feel like Piratella is going to be the make or break of some of these races, with setting a foot slightly wide or going into the Variante Alto, of course, as well. Just cutting a little bit too much off the inside there will have the same effect, because too many of those warnings and you're going to get yourself penalties. And I feel like later on, might see quite a few of those popping up on our screens as the drivers start trying to absolutely every bit of the track to their advantage to try and break this tow. As you say, nobody wants to be in the tow, but at the moment everybody is. So it's going to be interesting to see. We've got a move going on for P5. Daniel has managed to make his way past Andrew Korapi into the Variante Alta on this lap, up to P5, sorry. in the Williams at the moment, jumping past the Haas driver. And there must have been a bad exit for Andrew Korapi, because that move sort of came out of nowhere for Daniel. The gap wasn't any different to anywhere else we've seen up and down this DRS train at the moment. We just managed to get it done, and of course with the advantage of it being a DRS train, Daniel won't have to worry about his rival being able to use DRS to come back at him on the subsequent laps, because he too will be getting it from Zander Van Dijken out in front. Everybody, I think we've reached that sort of phase now where, for the most part, people have started to settle in and calm down a little bit. Some of that early lap aggression starting to wear away, perhaps, as everybody settles into their chosen strategy and just manages their resources and looks after their race a little bit more. But it is interesting to see how that sort of early squabble has... All round goes Leonard Goetze! Around goes the Alpha Tauri. That's coming out of... Is that Aqua Minerale? No, that's coming through Piratella. The back end just went... I was about to comment on how he used quite a lot of his DRS, and we had this beautiful helicam shot of him coming through Piratella, and the back end said no, and around he went, and the front wing is gone on that car. So that is a pit stop this lap with certainty for Leonard Goetze. And that is a promising start to a race gone in an instant. So even in the dry, you guys are having to watch those rear tyres, watch that rear grip through the traction zones. We saw it in qualifying on the soft tyres. Some of them were struggling to get the power downs out of corners and getting a wobble on through Piratella. And in the race, it's no different.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of the setups of the cars, at least, if we can judge a little bit from tyre wear, that they're very front heavy. They like to go very nose deep. So, of course, when you go over crests, the first thing that is going to lift is going to be the rear. And when you're in that position, unless you're very careful with the throttle, you are very easily going to get yourself compromised. And that's exactly what we saw with Leonard Goetze. But beyond this, I say a lot of the drivers are just sort of biding their time, waiting, starting to settle into the race, as you said, trying not to get any further warnings and get some penalties for track limits. We've already seen people like Jani Turpkov extending, and in fact, say we have themselves, Jona Martins, and I believe Gettoned, all on 2 warnings right now, so they are very close to getting a full-on track limits penalty.
Yeah, I'm just keeping one eye on, at the moment, the space that was filled by Leonard Goetze having that spin immediately was filled, so the DRS train didn't break, everybody just moved up a carriage. And for the moment we've got Jan Haladej, Evan Ritchie gaining from that one, filling in that gap for the time being, but we saw Simon Lekomsky with a bit of a wobble coming out of the Variante Alta a little bit further back than everybody else is, still within that DRS range. See these gaps all sort of sitting around the 4 to 8 tenths marks at the moment. Everybody just finding a nice little bit of room. Keep the cars relatively cool, keep the tyres cool, keep them in the operating windows, and just sort of watch what they're going. But let's have a look at how much damage to the resources everybody has done, because the big fight that's brewing at the moment especially is the fight for the lead, and Valentin Tijvaard has had to use quite a lot of that battery power for the moment to retain that lead. Drake Dempsey right up behind with a lot more battery left in the tank. It has to be said, 40% more battery than Tijvaard's got at the moment. Then you take a look further back, Zander Van Dijken, not a lot of battery life left with Olaf Soko behind him, though Soko also using a very similar amount and almost draining the tanks, whereas Daniel in P5, we saw him make a move up Andrew Korapi a little while ago. I feel like there's going to be some more moves to the Williams coming up soon, because he's got a nearly full battery in that car at the moment. He is really just chilling out there for the time being. Probably the best driver out there in terms of battery percentage remaining for the time being. I think he's been very, very frugal indeed. And that could pay dividends later on. Of course, we saw earlier on as well, Zoltan Boda was pretty frugal. He's still got plenty of battery life compared to those around him. Yannick Turpkov down into the 20% now. Jona Martins has got 3%. So he's got nothing, really. So if we see a charge from Zoltan Boda in the next few laps, Jona Martins, you have to think, once Yannick Turpkov is dispatched off, as it's as if by magic I'm starting to curse them already, because we're talking about him and he picks up a penalty. We were saying about the penalties earlier on. That's a big wiggle for Yannick Turpkov in the background as well there. Coming out of Tosa, couldn't get the power down coming up the hill. shouldn't cost a position because Altomoto is a little bit further back this time, but that will not be a sight to behold for the Aston Martin, and having to burn a lot more battery still to stay ahead of Zoltan Boda.
But it's not just that in terms of keeping ahead of Zoltan Boda. They know if they dropped back any more, if they didn't use that battery to recover, they'd be out of the train, which essentially would have split the race in half and given them no chance to catch back up to things. It goes to show how much ERS is a strategic tool. We're seeing with Drake Dempsey, they're not using the DRS to overtake. Instead, they're using the DRS to keep pace while simultaneously keeping that charge in the battery, running Valentin Tyvard out of their resources so they can effortlessly breeze on by when the time is right. Maybe even getting an undercut and then using that resource to retain position on the flip side of the race. There's so many strategic options and so many different things that you can do with the tools at your disposal, say DRS, ERS. There's a lot that you can do. And it really goes to show not only how high of a level these drivers are operating on in terms of raw skill, pace, maximizing the track, the lines, minimizing the scrubbing of the tires, but also in terms of strategy. So getting into their opponents' heads, playing those mind games, going for those overcuts, undercuts, you name it. It's a big, big task to drive at this level.
It absolutely is. It's not just a case, as you say, of plopping yourself down in your sim and pressing the loud pedal and turning the wheel to go around the corners. There's so much more to it than that. It's like 4D chess when you're involved in a race at this level. Just all those strategy calls, as you say. Who will be the first to bite, though, off the hard tyre? Will it be Valentin Tyvard or will it be Drake Dempsey? And how much is that extra ERS going to play into the fast in-lap, fast out-lap you have to expect the Ferrari man to be pulling out as time goes on? For now, though, he is still just chilling out there. Valentin Tyvard starting to slowly recharge that battery a little bit, as I can see for the moment. Still wanting to retain that lead, but importantly, the train has broken. Jonas Martins has dropped off the back of Simon Lekomsky, 1.4 seconds that gap now, and that has really got the bit between Janne Turkov's teeth. Janne trying to find a way past almost every single corner so far this lap. Right on the back of Jonas Martins. Of course, Zoltan Boda will be coming along for the party too. Jonas Martins really is going to be a sitting duck on this lap. There is no DRS going to be available. There is no ERS available, so you can see 2% battery life in that McLaren at the moment, and a penalty to his name as well. Things are not going the way of Jonas Martins right now. So I feel like it's a matter of when, not if, as in fact he goes off the track and he's going to lose even more time coming out of the Variante Alta there. In fact, he has somehow gained some time there, which is somewhat unexpected, and that might actually put him in DRS range of Simon Lekomsky, which is a little bit interesting. It has put him in DRS range of Simon Lekomsky, so it's not going to be on this lap that Janne Turkov and Zoltan Boda start mounting that charge. That's questionable.
Yeah, I wouldn't put too much faith in that play. Say that it looks like they ran wide and managed to gain time despite, but they're still running on an empty tank. They've still got 0%, in fact, of their battery. Olaf
Soko went off the road through turn one. I saw him. He was involved in a battle with Daniel, and he went onto the gravel on the inside of turn 2 and 3 at Tamburello, and he's dropped even more positions now behind Andrew Corapi. He's stuck in that sandwich with Corapi and Jan Halliday right now. So he started in P3. He's just slowly falling his way down the grid, and now the work really needs to be done if he's going to get anywhere back near where his teammate is. Of course, his teammate is looking in a very good position to be contending for a race win from the end of this race. We're nearing, we're over a third distance. That's the word I was looking for. And in that third of the race, he's dropped 3 positions.
Yeah, so with a pack as tightly condensed as this one, goes to show how even the tiniest of mistakes, tiniest of wiggles, that wasn't even a dramatic collision. They haven't got any lasting damage, and yet they're down all the way into P6 just from that minor mistake. But yeah, as you say, your teammate is in a very good position, but they are still fighting their absolute heart out to say up the top of the grid. Valentin Tyvard, 46% battery, trying to go for a recharge, where Drake Dempsey is near full. They're going to start thinking about putting the pressure on and keeping that Haas's battery running down. But say in the meantime, we have to say Jonas Martins currently on 6 warnings for track limits. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw another penalty be dished out very soon. And that extend was certainly interesting.
Yeah, and speaking of applying pressure, we just saw an overtake for Zoltan. Oh, there is the penalty. You called it. Ben called it, and almost immediately, a few quarters later, Jonas Martins picking up his second penalty. And Jonas Martins going wide again through the Variante Alta. That keeps I'm wondering if the stewards might have something to say about that come the end of the race, because that is the second lap in a row we've witnessed Jonas Martins deliberately. You have to feel this is deliberate. Oh, and he's paying for his karma there going through the final corner. It looked almost deliberate, running wide to try and stay in DRS range of Simon Likomsky. Of course, as we say, it looked like perhaps a little bit of karma bit back there with the rear wheels not wanting to stay glued to the track and in pits came Jonas Martins. But I am merely speculating, of course, as I'm not the man behind the wheel. I'm the man behind the microphone, which involves, trust me, a lot less skill. And that was a little bit less skill than we're used to seeing from Zoltan Bode coming through the Variante Villeneuve wide through the second part of that corner. That's Yannick Turpkov back through. And Zoltan Bode, that was a somewhat uncharacteristic mistake for this race so far. We've not really seen him put a foot wrong throughout this race at the moment, but that maybe just feeling the pressure a little bit now. Of course, he's not going to have the DRS on this lap anymore. As speaking of more pressure coming through Yannick Turpkov, through Ackermann Arale, almost making the identical mistake and running a bit wide, but will see Zoltan Bode just chill out for a moment, sit behind the Aston Martin and wait for the DRS to strike, because there is going to be no DRS for Yannick Turpkov. It's a 2.5 second gap ahead. You can see it there to the AlphaTauri of Simon Likomsky. Jonas Martins has left quite the gap in the field right now as we head around the final part of Ravazza. The DRS you can see coming online, and Yannick Turpkov and Alessandro Moras and Thomas Lavinen coming into the pits this lap. Zoltan Bode left out there all on his own at the moment. There's nobody around him, and he's got free air to start that charge that we saw him psyching himself up for earlier on. Is the undercut going to be strong here, or is Zoltan Bode going to be able to make these hard tyres work, make this pace advantage work, and gain some positions in this series of pit stops? But what we can tell from this is that a lot of these drivers are seemingly pretty confident they can get the mediums from here to the end. So are we going to see the leaders coming in anytime soon?
Well, I have to question the efficacy of Zoltan Bode's strategy here. So they do have the clean air, you're right, but they also don't have the DRS of the train ahead. So they are going to gradually move away unless Zoltan Bode goes on an absolute charge trying to make up that time. They're doing well so far. Looks like they're using the clean air to full advantage, having a little bit of a wiggle coming through and heading into the third sector, but otherwise they are still by no means out of the woods yet. They are the back of the hard runners. Ghetto getting a 3-second time penalty for warnings there. So it looks like a serious infraction to jump straight up there, but they are definitely going to have to think about how they want to play their strategy. It looks like a majority of the drivers ahead are going into the pits, as is Zoltan Bode coming in as well.
Yeah, so 4 more coming into the pits this lap, and we're going to have to keep our eyes on Zoltan Bode. Has he been able to keep himself ahead of Yannick Turpkov with that in-lap? He didn't actually use a lot of battery on the in-lap, of course, no DRS. He's going to get held up a little bit by the Aston Martin as well. It's almost like a little bit there that we saw Jan Halliday, not deliberately, of course, but with the timing of the pits, holding Zoltan Bode up, which will allow his teammate Yannick Turpkov through. He's not careful. Jonas Martins setting the fastest lap of the race right now from P12. There goes Jonas Martins past Zoltan Bode, and here comes Yannick Turpkov then down towards the first corner. Where are we? Where are we? He's got the line still, so not quite quick enough for Yannick Turpkov to take the position, and Zoltan Bode holds on to P12 at the moment, but Yannick Turpkov has got a little bit more heat in those tyres with a lap under their belt already. Are we going to see a fight back from the Aston Martin on this lap, or are they going to sit? They can see him pushing Zoltan Bode through Tosa. He's all over the back of him at the moment, but are we going to see a move, or are they going to stay there? Who knows at this phase of the race? It's very, very close indeed as we head down towards Ackermann and Arale. How quickly can Zoltan Bode switch those mediums on to try and keep ahead as well? 27% battery is what Yannick Turpkov's got available. 57% battery is what Zoltan Bode's got available, and I feel like there's a lot of that's going to get used on this lap for defence, as we are starting to see some more of the front runners coming in. Korapi, Sander Van Dijken, Jeffrey Ritchie, Olaf Soko, Modesto Mena all pitting on this lap as well. But the lead two, Valentin Tijveld and Drake Dempsey, staying out there for the moment on the hard tyres. They're going long on this stint. And is that going to pay off for them? Or will this bring the likes of Daniel and Korapi and that into the fight as time goes on? Laminen setting the fastest lap. Yannick Turkov moving to the outside down towards turn one with the DRS. Makes it look easy on Zoltan Boda. And that was a bit of a foregone conclusion with the lack of DRS. These guys need to work together to stay where they are right now, as we keep our eyes on what's going on. Look at this, almost 3 wide, heading towards the very anti-Villeneuve with Modesto Mena fighting with Simon Lekomsky at the moment for the final points position. Olaf Soko just ahead of them as well, almost side by side coming out of that corner, with Simon Lekomsky having to back off for the time being, leaving Modesto Mena in P10. Staring at the back of that Ferrari, who's really suffered through this first part of the race, from P3 on the grid, now running in P9 after most of the pit stops, as the lead two both pit on lap 18.
They had really no choice, but say the Ferrari not looking in the greatest spots, as you said. They're out of the DRS of the train ahead. They are a little bit of a sitting duck. They're running on no battery, no DRS. They've got Modesto Mena really putting the pressure on behind them, and where they have DRS and half a battery full, they really got to wonder how long can they keep this up. I mean, we saw Zoltan Boda, despite early mediums, cold mediums, really putting in a great defensive job against Jarno Turkov. Eventually the move was done, but still they did a great job up to that point. Modesto Mena is going to get the move though, heading down, almost makes it look like a piece of cake coming through there. That Mercedes is up into P9, Olaf Soko down in P10, and I think Olaf Soko needs to change strategy a little bit. They may be pushing a bit too hard on the battery. They need to give themselves some time. Modesto Mena is on the cusp of the DRS train, has just somewhat caught back up, but they do still need to think about their resources.
Yeah, Modesto Mena looking like they're on a bit of a charge at the moment. When that move was made, there was about 1.5 seconds, I think it was, to the car in front, which is Jonah Martins, and that gap immediately has come back down to below a second, so really pulling the field back together in the Mercedes at the moment, and will be dragging, of course, Soko and Lekomsky and co behind along with them for the ride. Meanwhile, up front, Drake Dempsey still P2 for the moment. I thought for a second, coming out of the pits, that Valentin Tijveld might have been held by the Ferrari coming down the pit lane after making its pit stop, but no, they did come out in the order they went in, and Daniel is a lot closer than I think he was before the pit stops as well. So the undercut perhaps a little bit stronger than we thought. Modesto Mena said he was flying. Sets the fastest lap of the race on lap 19 in that Mercedes, really closing that gap. Jeff Ritchie at the moment is having a fight with Jan Halliday as well. Manages to get that move done through the first corner and is right on the back of Sander Van Dijken as well. Doesn't have DRS. So thanks to these pit stops, we have seen another break in the train. We've got the lead pairing of Tijveld and Dempsey out there in their own little battle. Now we've got Daniel and Korapi out there in their own little battle, and then the big train coming up behind with now Sander Van Dijken at the head of that, conducting the ride for almost the entire rest of the field at this point. But it does look like Jeffrey Ritchie may be looking to make a move right there pretty soon.
They're going to be pushing, you know that well. So they have a little bit of battery saving to do despite all of this, but they are still keeping that pressure on. They know Sander Van Dijken is out of the train and is going to have to burn everything to get back up. But it's not like they themselves have much to burn. They are, in fact, on less battery than Jeffrey Ritchie. So I think he's biding his time, using that DRS to recharge, like we saw with Drake Dempsey a little bit earlier in the race behind Valentin Tijveld. They're using that to their advantage. They're using it strategically and waiting for the perfect moment to take it up to P5.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of these gaps getting very, very close going towards turn one, but nobody making a move at the moment. Everybody chilling, as you say. As I say that, Olaf Soko. Oh, what's happened to Olaf Soko? He's hemorrhaging positions. Did he go off? Coming through Tamburello. I thought he'd lost a position to Simon Lekomsky, and then he lost one to Yannick Turkov, and then lost one to Zoltan Boda as well. So it must have been the mother of all bad exits coming off of Tamburello, whether he got on the gravel again for not the first time so far this race, and bad luck turns to worse, as there's a big wiggle coming through Piratella for Ferrari as well. He's not even in the points anymore. Don't forget, Olaf Soko started P3 on the grid. It has all come undone this race for Olaf Soko. And now he needs to find some pace. He's not got much battery left to stay on the back of Zoltan Boda either. And soon he'll be out of the DRS range as well. And that will leave him a sitting duck for Maras to take another position away as time ticks on. We've got 11 laps to go here of the Imola circuit. And at the moment, Valentin Tijvaart does still lead this race from Drake Dempsey, but Drake Dempsey is definitely in the position of power right now. You can see a little bit more battery life in the Ferrari at the moment, as Zoltan Boda does start making a move on Yane Turpkov as well to take P11. He wants to get himself up into the points at the moment, charging from P18 on the grid. Tijvaart still leads from Drake Dempsey, but as time ticks on, this battle is... It's a pot that's waiting to boil, as we got yellow flags as Olaf Soko had another incident. He has. Oh, through the Varianti Villeneuve this time, I think that was. And you can see the dirt on the tyres. He's gone off again and down to P15. It has all gone so wrong for Olaf Soko and Imola.
Yes, the second Ferraris are getting very much a little bit pear-shaped. The plan has not gone well, so they're dropping down from such a prime position as well, and it's just been misstep after misstep, and it's unfortunate to see, but they have dropped all the way back down. You know they're going to be frustrated with themselves after that, and you can see they're ailing on resources. Dirty car. Doesn't look like they are damaged, however, they will certainly have a pride that is damaged after this.
Yeah, the damage to the ego is perhaps more punishing than the damage to the car. Of course, as we were saying earlier on, Olaf Soko, one of the championship protagonists in season 31, was running pretty high up the order for some time. Missed out last time round, and perhaps just not a fan of Italy in general, as Imola has definitely not been kind to the Ferrari driver either. Down in P15 at the moment. We had a little bit of movement going on while we were talking about all of that as well, down into turn 1. Jeffrey Ritchie and Xander Van Dyken getting a little bit of action going on there. Jeffrey Ritchie making his way past the McLaren as we've got Jonah Martins is out of the race. What has happened there? Coming out of the Piratella, and that is a car in the middle of the road. Right on the exit to Piratella, as we say, everybody's slowing right down. So is this a safety car? I've got no warning on my screen to say safety car, but people are slowing down like there is one, and I can see the safety car is on the track. Yes, it is a safety car then. Jonah Martins coming out of the Piratella, crashes, and ooh, for a moment there, I thought we were going to see a change in strategy for Drake Dempsey. He was right on the pit. It looked like he was in the pits, in the pit entry lane, diving straight back out, a la Lewis Hamilton we saw a few years ago. It was like the in, out moment there. With Drake Dempsey staying out in P2 at the moment. Everybody's staying out, in fact, except for Maras, Laminen, and Soko for the time being, all coming in. Maras putting the soft tyres on, Laminen putting the soft tyres on, Soko, I assume, yep, there go, some soft tyres on the Ferrari as well. So they're going to be very pacey towards the end of this race once they get the back of the safety car queue. But this does absolutely neutralise it, and this could be very interesting because Tijvaart and Dempsey have been out there on their own for most of this race, but Daniel's had pace as well in P3, as has Kohlrabi, who's stuck with him, and now they are all going to be right next to each other when the safety car comes in.
Well, it's interesting. We see a lot of the lower end of the field all going into the pits because in the grand scheme of things, they have nothing to lose. They're running maybe on older tyres. They're starting to feel the age of the compound. They haven't got a grid position at stake like a lot of the drivers at the front do, and may necessitate it. And even if not, what's the harm in trying? They can get a bit of compound advantage. We see near everyone, bar Ghetto, on the soft compound who went into the pits. And rejoining the queue, you can see all of that time gap, say 20 seconds for Thomas Laminen, 16 seconds for Leonard Goetze, 17 for Get Owned. That's all going to disappear. And suddenly, it's going to be a lot more equalised and a much bigger fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And this could have been the get-out-of-jail-free card for Olaf Soko, has to be said. With the lot coming undone, he's now got that compound advantage. He will be on the back of the train as well. Only Laminen in front is also on the soft. So there could still be points on the card for the Ferrari here as this race comes to its climax. We've got 8 laps to go. at Imola here, lap 24 of 32 of round 7 of PSGL F3 season 31. Yannick Turpkov now choosing to come into the pits. May have been a little bit late. Soko Maras, and but we'll get past as well. Leonard Goetze quite some way back. Won't be able to get past for the moment, but losing a handful of positions for the one lap slightly younger tyres may not have been the call for Yannick Turpkov, but perhaps there was some other reasoning behind it that we aren't aware of. It's almost like they're having a little battle with Leonard Goetze at the moment out there on the track. But as we await the safety car coming back in, we do now have that split, as you say, in the field. Almost the entire back half of the field on the softs, with the exception of Getone, who's put on a set of mediums for his final stint of the race. Everybody in the top 10 staying out on the mediums they put on not too long ago. Going to the end on that tyre. This safety car, of course, brought out by Iona Martins, losing the car through Piratella and destroying it on the outside wall, parking up in the middle of the road after that incident. Looked like it might have been all on its own, but of course we didn't catch it on camera, so we're not sure if there was anybody else involved. If there was, stewards will definitely be having a look between now and the next round we go to. Hopefully we are going to get the safety car coming in pretty soon. Then pretty much all the field are grouping together. Maybe one more lap behind the safety car before we get green flag running again. And it's going to be a very exciting sprint to the finish, especially now we've got Daniel and Korapi and Richie and Van Dijken all involved in this lead battle with Tyvard and Drake Dempsey.
They're going to be pushing hard. And in fact, I would have to say, one that has actually lost more than they've gained here is going to be Drake Dempsey, because they were running a strategy of conserving the battery. So you got to think, at one point they were over 50% higher than Tyvard on an ERS management front, but now with the safety car, everyone's had a chance to recharge their battery. They're both on 100%, so that strategy is essentially null and void to them. They're going to have to think of something else. They're going to have to think of it fast as well, because in terms of boost, in terms of ERS, they are on fully even keel.
Yeah, everybody on even keel, in fact, as we take our look down the grid. Of course, as you'd expect, the safety car, every single driver has filled that battery tank right the way up. One driver on sub 100%, so it is going to be a very interesting sprint to the finish. Who's going to burn it? It's almost like the race just gets restarted here, and those on the soft tyres especially are going to be very pacey towards the end. With the battery and the fact that they are going to be in DRS range of Zoltan Boda as well. Zoltan Boda, who's doing such a tremendous job of pulling that car up into the points and maybe even further through the points as time went on. Now it looks like he might be coming under some pressure for the restart from Laminin and Soko behind. Safety car is indeed in this lap, so we are getting ready to go. Green flag running once again then. Valentin Tyvard will become the de facto safety car as we head down towards Ravatsa to close out lap 25. Start lap 26, green flag racing once again. And it is really a question of who is going to win this race right now. And as we head down towards the hill, I can see the question being asked in chat. PC F1 is indeed done for the season, so the Thursday action will be continuing though, of course. So that will be back later on. Early on next year, I think it was. But now we are back running here in PC F3. The Haas of Valentin Tyvard leads the field across the line to start lap 26. Green flag running, the safety car no longer on the circuit. And look at this, Drake Dempsey already weaving around to try and find a way through. Does he want to get through this early? Does he want to hold on for the moment? He is still forced to hold on behind. For the moment, that gap is just about as low as we've seen it for the entire race. And look at just how low all of the gaps are for the entire race. Modesto Almeida is right on the back of Jan Halliday, who in turn is right on the back of Sander Van Dijken. And then there's a little bit more of a gap forwards to Jeffrey Ritchie at the moment. But the important one to watch is going to be the soft tyre runners. Thomas Laminin out there at the moment. Of course, Morgan Bull, our defending champions replacement for the remainder of the season, is going to be the soft tyre running, well, the lead car on the soft tyre in this final phase of the race. Where is he going to finish? How well is he going to be able to drag the rest of the soft runners through? Of course, we're going to have no DRS for a couple of laps. Olaf Soko is looking very racy out there at the moment as well, looking to undo some of the mistakes from earlier on through this race. He was looking at a move on Thomas Laminen through the start of this restart. But now it's Laminen who is looking like he's making a move already up the inside into Ravatsa on Zoltan Boda. And Boda, who's been making moves forwards the entire race, now ending up making moves backwards, not pitting for those mediums. That could be hurting him, as now Olaf Soko is going to be lining him up for a move as well down the main straight. No DRS, of course. This is on ERS and tyres alone. And through goes Soko, through goes Maras, and Boda, who had such a charge through the field, is falling all the way back through it again.
As Zoltan Boda struggling a little bit. He knows that they've got the compound advantage. He can only fight them so much. He's pushing them to the absolute limit. Olaf Soko is already up ahead and trying to charge now, trying to catch back up to Thomas Laminen and heading up the rest of the field. We're seeing starts a little bit of a formative pattern once again coming through. Everyone within about half a second of each other. The two race leaders of Tyvard and Dempsey, a few laps younger in terms of medium, so they still have plenty of life to give, and they are right on the operating window for those yellow walls. But right now, the focus is all on the middle and the back of the grid. So Jane Turpkov chasing down Zoltan Boda, the next one to try and do so. You got to think, though, you've got to keep those tyres under temperature. You've got to keep them in that operating window. Push them too hard, the carcass cooks, you start to lose grip, you get a little bit of inconsistency, and that's going to spell problems. DRS is now back in play, but we see now Jane Turpkov is going to go around the outside, going to have a superior speed, and is going to get the move done, as is Leonard Goetze. They're going to send it down the other side of Zoltan Boda. It's going to be a double overtake on the start-finish straight. They're pushing through, they're locking the move in through the first sector. Zoltan Boda's really struggling at the bottom.
Yeah, don't rule them out yet, though. As you can see from the battery percentages, those on the soft tyres, Leonid Goetze, Jane Turpkov, have used almost all of their charge available to make this run through on the soft tyres early in the green flag racing after the safety car. Zoltan Boda's saved a little bit, perhaps waiting for those on the soft tyres to run out of rubber towards the end, because they will be burning it to make those positions up as soon as possible at this phase of the race, as we've seen. So maybe he can get some of those positions back towards the end. Tyvard at the moment is still leading out there, but this lap DRS has been re-enabled. So Greg Dempsey is going to be looking to try and make this move very soon. You have to think 4 laps of the race, remaining 3 at the end of this one. Greg Dempsey is going to be all over the back, though. Saying that, Tyvard has managed to hold on to just about his entire battery after this restart. Drake Dempsey's actually used more of it than Tyvard has at the moment. So this battle for the lead is really going to be starting to heat up towards the end. Simon Lekomsky is going to be the next medium runner to get absolutely mugged down the main straight. 2 of them have gone past him already. Maras now fighting as well. Laminen and Soko are going at it. Soko's gone round, and there's more contact on Laminen as well. Contact between all of them going through there. It's like 6 cars going through the Tamburello is never going to work in the order they were trying to get them through. Soko went round, and then Laminen got tagged around as well. So Soko's managed to get going, and somehow it looks like he doesn't actually have any damage still. Laminen,
so it's not looking good.
Possibly does have damage. I did see a bit of a front wing somewhere, so was there more damage? Zoltan Boda is making a charge through the field once more now, taking full advantage of that contact there. He's up to P12 now, getting past Leonard Goetze. Is it Leonard? It is Leonard Goetze. I saw a front wing lying on the outside of the circuit. That front wing was an AlphaTauri front wing. And this isn't for the first time this race that we've seen that AlphaTauri with no front wing. And once again, he's going to have to crawl around to the pit lane and put a new one on. And it's all come undone for so many different drivers right now. Leonard Goetze, not the least, with no front wing. Laminen, who was on a charge, it's coming on for. And of course, Olaf Soko, who's trying so hard to make up for the mistakes from earlier on in the race. In fact, there's 2 cars with no front wing. Jane Turpkov's not got one either. As both of these 2 now pit for repairs. Soko was trying so hard to undo the work that he put in qualifying. And look, he's going to get done by Alessandro Maras now into turn 1. Side by side, there you go. No contact this time around. They're still going to be side by side coming out of that corner. In fact, no, they're not. Soko managed to hold on to that position for the time being, but he's back where he started before the safety car, and Zoltan Boda's laughing out there at the moment. He looked like he was going to drop down so many positions on the older mediums, and it turns out the soft tyre runners have just sort of played ping pong with each other and taken themselves out of the way for him.
Yeah, they really just put themselves out of contention. But yeah, we saw massive collision. So there was multiple cars involved because we saw Maras, Salamin and Olaf Soko all in a very tough spot. Leonard Goetze and Jane Turkov both losing their front wings, although managing to keep it the right way round on the track. Although going in for the pits, Jane Turkov is going to go into the intermediates. An interesting call. We have seen the track get more and more overcast, but really, given that the track is still dry, we have 1 and a bit laps left to go. Is it going to be worth it?
But is it going to be worth it? Is this the reverse Carter Lundy strat and go on the tyre really early rather than really late? We'll have to wait and see. I only say this because I'm fairly certain Carter's still watching in the chat somewhere, and I have fond memories of watching him in PCF trying to go super long. I think was it Saudi Arabia with the rain? I can't remember exactly which track it was, but speaking of rain, did I just see some falling on my screen, or was that just a weird particle? That could be interesting towards the end if there is going to be rain coming. It is, as you say, getting more and more overcast. Drake Dempsey still hunting down Valentin Taivard for the lead. They're both hitting the battery just about as much as they can for the moment. Valentin Taivard, 40% battery left. Drake Dempsey, 27% battery left. So, and did I see rain? I think I'm seeing rain, you know, Ben.
We're starting to see rain.
Some rain falling at the top of the hill. And that could have been an inspired decision by Jane Turkov. Maybe the rain's coming too late. But what this does mean, I'm getting real Sochi a couple of years ago vibes right now. Is this rain going to come quick enough to make too much of a difference on the race? Taivard's still leading for the time being. If we see DRS disabled at the top of the screen, we know we've got a lot of rain coming down. We haven't seen that just yet. We are on the final lap of the race. So it looks like the rain has just come a moment too late for Jane Turkov to really take advantage of it. But it is still going to make things very, very greasy. For the time being, though, final lap of the race, Valentin Taivard still leading 10% battery to 8% battery. It's almost even between these two as it has been the entire race, burning every single resource they have down to the wire. Drake Dempsey has been hunting the Haas for the entire race. They finished the other way round on the podium last time out in Monza. This time round, it's looking like it's going to be Valentin Taivard's evening. Drake Dempsey just struggled a little bit coming out of Aqua Minerale from the aqua falling from the sky there. It looked like the traction is almost gone at the top of the circuit at the moment as we head down towards Ravazza. Taivard's got quite a decent lead now. Just needs to keep it tidy. Through the final corner we go. And this time around, it's looking like it is Valentin Taivard taking the win at Imola. Drake Dempsey in second. Jeffrey Ritchie's going to close out the podium in P3 with Daniel just behind him. Korapi and Xander Van Dyken finishing 5th and 6th. Sorry, Modesto Mania in 7th with Jan Haladej. Milan Meyer behind. Zoltan Boda does pick up a point for his troubles from P18 on the grid and finishes in P10. Then it's Lukomsky, Gelone, Soko with a race to forget. Alessandro Moras, Thomas Laminin, Leonard Goetze will be making his way to final corner very shortly. And then Jane Turkov, who tried something a little bit interesting on the intermediates, didn't quite pay out, the rain coming a little bit too late. But Taivard with a very broad defence indeed, holding off Drake Dempsey for the entirety of this race, does take the win. And 2 podiums in 2 races for the Haas driver. Now, I said at the top of the broadcast, he's going to be the one to watch going into the final part of the season, with a podium being his first points finish, and now a win being the second. This is going to really spice up the championship. Drake Dempsey, I believe, will be extending their championship lead coming out of Imola, and Zoltan Boda gets given the driver of the day, which I don't think I would disagree with coming from where they did on the grid. But as we see the podium ceremony settling in now, as we see Valentin Taivard take the first win of the season, 2nd points finish, 2nd podium for the Haas driver, and it's going to really spice things up, Ben.
It is 100% spicing things up. Definitely things are only getting more interesting from here. And say, apart from, say, I believe, say, Joseph Loke, we have not seen a single driver get a podium or get a win twice. So, Valentin Tybard, say, congratulations to them for joining the top step club, as we call it. So, being some of the few drivers who have managed to claim that prestigious achievement. But there we go. What a performance that was, I say, from Tyvard and Dempsey. Both of them really pushing each other to each other's limits. I think what was the deal breaker, what secured that win, was that safety car. I think, say, the difference in strategy, that ERS management, it just did not play out in their favor, unfortunately. The safety car really equalized the field in terms of resources, and that spelt doom for Dempsey's podium, or say, I should say win, should spell doom for their win campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that safety car definitely didn't help. And I have to wonder, how would those soft tyre runners have done if they hadn't gotten tangled up? With a couple of laps to go, the soft tyre would have definitely become the more preferable tyre, especially with track temperatures dropping. They would have had a little bit of an easier time on that tyre than the mediums would have done towards the end of the hards. In fact, towards the end of it, I don't think anybody was on the hards, but yeah, it's definitely there's a lot of what ifs from this race, but what isn't a what if is of course Valentin Tyvard's race win, as well as Drake Dempsey getting that P2. Desperately would have wanted another win of the season, but a new winner in PC F3 season 31, and that's about the sixth. I think that's the sixth different winner we've had this season, if my memory is serving correctly, in 7 rounds. So
that is
definitely getting pretty mixed up at the top there. Nobody really finding the consistency to win repeatedly. Podiums repeatedly we've seen already from Tyvard, so that will be interesting to watch. But, we're not going to do any driver interviews tonight. We've had a few technical issues in the background, as you may be hearing, actually, on the live stream. So in order to try and preserve everything from maybe not falling over or burning or something, we are going to immediately go and hand over to F2, which has not long started now. If I've set this up right, this should automatically redirect you. You don't even need to click. You'll be ported straight over to go and see Chris and Luke take you through the F2 action. But from us, myself, Paul Zytrix Buckley, and Ben Satchford, thank you very much for joining us this evening for PSGL F3 Round 7. We'll be back in a week's time for Round 8. Make sure to tune in, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Yeah.